Hi there. This is the indoor view, okay? Because the mobile doesn't have enough charge, so I can't take you outside today. Neither I can sit at the place where I made a video yesterday. So this is all. This is the space where I usually sit during my chamber hours. Today it didn't go well because there's nothing much to read or share. So because of that, the chamber did not give enough like what I expected it to. Reading is for your mind like what is yoga for your body and mind, probably. Reading is like for your mind like what exercise does to your body. So many times what happens, we don't read at all because we feel that there's nothing to read, nothing much. What is there to read? So obviously it's like the feeling that we get, unless we are not eating too much, what is the purpose of having to work out or do some exercise? What is the use? Do we have to? That question comes. So reading, if you have to make it a habit, and why I do some reading, at least a little, is because I don't want to lose it. When you lose it, what happens if you don't read? Like when we were studying in college or school, what happened, we read a lot because it was mandatory. There was no other way at all. We had to read. So what happens is that when you read, your brain works. See, the way the words are put and you read them to make something meaningful out of it. All this is brain work. So unless you are reading something, what happens is that your brain kind of slows down and it doesn't recognize how to put words together and make out the meaning. In the sense, if you are given a difficult aspect to read and understand. So it depends on how well you have been reading all the way, because if you have been reading so much, what happens is that you are able to read through that paragraph very easily and make sense of it, which we kind of lose when we lose the habit of reading. So what happens, you can only read easy lines and you can only understand probably the simplest things that is given to you. That's what happens. And you don't want it to happen. And that's the reason you should keep on reading something not just informative, something difficult to understand. When you read something difficult to understand, you have to read through it again. That is something that we did in our school days and college days when we had to do it for the sake of marks, right? For the sake of exams or whatever. To do well in your studies, you had to. There was no other way. So you did that. But later it was not so important for us, so we avoid reading and we read only simple things like a poster that comes, maybe a little of headlines of the newspaper. That's it. We don't get to read probably things that are difficult to understand, because so what happens is that our brain kind of takes it easy. Even our brain likes to take things easy. If it is easy, it is much better. So we are able to understand only simple things. And if you read it once and you feel it's difficult, something happens to your brain and you just neglect it totally. You go to something that is more easy to understand, to read and understand. So this happens when you don't make a habit of reading. And in order to avoid that, what you should do is to make it a habit to read something that is difficult, even if it means that you have to read it over and again until you understand. And the next step is, once you understand what you have read, you can always reason out, in the sense, what is that you have got to say about what you have read. That's what I usually do. It's not just about being able to read something that is difficult. The next step is being able to share your views on what you have read. That is also equally important, because that brings out something new out of you. It's not like you ready-made, like copy and paste, which is okay for a while, but what is your view on something? And when you do that, your brain works. So these two exercises I do because it keeps your brain fast, because it's very easy for your brain to slow down if it feels that it is much comfortable not to read, or just to read through easy things and not to share your views, your personal views. When you have to share it, it's more difficult for your brain. And your brain is one organ just like any other your body part. It likes to a life that is very easy and comfortable. But that's the worst thing that you could do for your brain, to make it a habit to run slow. Because what happens is that once you are slow down, you are slow, and when your brain is slow, it's very difficult to do anything good out of it, right? So that's the reason I spend some time reading, so that my brain works that way. So today what I wanted to talk about is something like that. You can see some things in the background, right? I'll set it right, don't worry. So that's about it. So today I wanted to tell you something about two ways of talking. Have you ever observed that most of the people probably, or very few people, I don't know if it applies to all, you speak much sensible and meaningful if you speak with your brain. Have you ever felt like that? In the sense, when you use this part of the brain while talking, you kind of you are more comfortable doing that. There is enough of pause and enough silence between what you want to say when you talk with your head. Unlike when you talk for the sake of talking, we all have to do at many points of our life, we have to speak just for the sake of speaking. And when we do that, it's just like blah blah blah. We just keep on speaking and we don't use our brain to speak like that. That's totally different from the normal way of speaking. Like I always say, there are two ways of cooking. One is with your mind and one is with your hands. So what is the difference? The difference is that when you cook with your mind, you do it in an order. It's all done by your mind. You keep an eye on how things are, how you plan it, what goes next, and all this. It's like playing chess. And that is one way of doing it, which cannot be done all the time probably, because this is a different way of doing. I wouldn't say this is a difficult way of doing, but it's a different way than to be cooking the normal way. So coming back to talking, I have always observed that when I talk with my mind, it's much better. It's like I sometimes say that when I make a song video, I sing in a graph. This pitching comes in a graph for me. In my mind, I just picturize a graph, and then the pitching goes like that in the imaginary graph which I have. And so when I do like that, most of the difficult songs which I could not imagine I would have sung, even those pitching, it goes correct in that when I do in the graph. Like in the graph, you have lines like this, and it's like a 4-line copy where you have not just 4 lines, many lines, and each line would depict the pitching. So you just have to go with the song, and it's much easy to sing like that when you imagine that way and sing. So the same way when you come to talking, I have observed that when I talk with my mind, it's much easier to actually frame meaningful thoughts than to talk for the sake of talking. Because most of the time, in our everyday life, we spend a lot of time talking for the sake of talking, where you don't use your mind. You can talk and talk and talk. So the question comes is what's the difference between talking for the sake of talking and talking with your mind? Talking with your mind means there is enough of pause between the lines, between what you want to speak because you think before you speak, and when you think, the thought that you want to share or convey comes to you, and after that comes, then you just put it into words. That's the difference. That's a basic difference. And I enjoy doing that kind of talking because it's much meaningful. There is a lot of silence between it, enough of pause, and it allows you to think actually what you want to say. Like today I'm doing mind talking. This is the way I do when I mind talk. Usually when I make a video, it's talk for the sake of talking. So what's the difference? The difference is that I don't think much in a deeper level, probably, where to do talk for the sake of talk. So my usual videos are like that. But if I do talking with mind, it will be something like this, which means I think of what I'm going to talk about, and so it keeps me focused on that, and don't let me get distracted like the other talking which I do. This is much better. So if you are familiar with one of this aspect, like either singing in the graph, in the lines, which helps you to maintain the right pitch, or if you are familiar with cooking with your mind rather than just cooking with your hands or the normal way, or if you're familiar with one of those two, you are familiar with what I'm trying to say here. When you talk with your mind, this is something that you should practice. Think and talk. It's okay to have silence. Silence is a part of communication. We usually, when we do talking for sake of talking, we kind of feel uncomfortable when you have to deal with pause. When there is silence, we don't know how to face it or handle it, or how to manage it when we are having a conversation with somebody else. But I tell you, when you speak with your mind, these meaningful pauses which come in between is needed, and it says much more than what you think it does. So this is something that I'm very comfortable with, like talking to somebody with your mind. It's so relaxing and it's so stimulating, I would say, rather than just talking for the sake of talking. But people avoid talking with mind for many reasons. What could be the reasons? I would say one reason is that when you talk with your mind, you have to think very, very clearly and say what you mean. And it means that you have to be honest with what you're trying to say. And that's not easy. We don't want to be honest. We just want to talk of something, that's it. Go blah, 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 that's it. It's much easy talking for the sake of talking, because we do it with strangers, we do it with most of the people we meet, because that's a part of life, that's a part of survival. We have to do that kind of talking as well. But if you want to have a meaningful talk, if you want to feel that your soul is happy having that conversation with somebody, you have to do this kind of talking, which is talking with your mind. Because it requires you to be honest. It helps you to reflect on many things which you have, which occurred in the past, probably, or it also helps you to make new connections with, like, you have experienced this, you felt this way. Anyway, it helps you to make a lot of connections here and there. That's how it works. So that's the reason people avoid it. We can't have it with everybody, because others won't be comfortable when you have this kind of talking with the mind. Not everybody are comfortable, because there is a lot of pause. You are telling something and then you put a pause there. It's uncomfortable. What will the other person, unless that person also can relate with talking with the mind, they have no idea what to do with that. Sometimes when I think of making a call, it's my habit, I think a lot, in the sense, what am I going to tell that person, and what if there is a lot of silence, because in phone it's more difficult. unless it's a video chat that we are doing. When it is a phone call, you hold the phone and the other person cannot see you unless they are very close to you and understand that your way of conversation. You make a call and you put a lot of pause in between. The silence is very uncomfortable for the other person, and so I usually prepare for phone calls because I know that there'll be some pauses and I don't know what to do with that. So this is another thing I wanted to talk to you about, and if you know what it is, tell me what is your idea about it, because I am very interested. I want to know whether it is just me, whether you have ever experienced of these two kinds of conversations that we can have. The normal conversation like which we do with our mouth, and the other conversation which we do with this part, where we want to say something and we make sure that that is what we say. And that takes a lot of effort. That takes a lot of your brain work. Unless you put that part into work, it's not going to happen at all. You're going to talk for the sake of talking. And I think that wisdom is known by wise men, they say. If you share your wisdom with everybody, they will not pick it. So the person has to be wise to know what is wisdom, and that is very difficult. That's the most difficult part of it. So let me tell you, if you want to have this kind of conversation, first you need to know whether the audience are right for you or the people who you are having. But I'm not forcing it on anyone. It's not like everybody should be able to have this kind of conversations. It's not possible because most of us are in the survival mode. Obviously, we do a lot of things in life based on survival mode, just for the heck of surviving, to getting by, we say. From today we go to next day, and before going to next day we just slip from this hour to next hour. And so many things that we do in our life is based on getting by. I just want to get over this hour so that it is next hour. So you give me any kind of challenges in this hour, definitely I'm going to face those challenges this hour, which will help me to get to the next hour, isn't it? So that's the mode we are all living in most of the day. And I wouldn't complain if people are not much familiar about this kind of conversations or talking with your mind, because we don't have time to do that, and we never thought about it. But people who have experienced it once or twice in their life, they know what I'm talking about. So I just wanted to know whether it is just me, or whether have you ever felt that kind of conversation makes sense, or you have an urge to have that kind of conversation because it is very it keeps you open and leaves you it requires you to work on your honesty as well, authenticity, whatever you call it. There's no place for lies in a conversation that you have with your mind. Only when you're talking for the sake of talking, we can say anything we want, because it's easy. See, we are, as long as you are a healthy person, you can talk, and you can talk on anything from this to that, and that's what we do mostly, jumping from this to that. Because if you have to talk with your mind, it only means that you need to be honest, and that's a heavy price you have to pay. We don't want to be honest, because if you are honest, we're going to expose a lot of things which we did not want. Probably the other person is not ready for that, maybe. So that's it. Okay, so this is the type of talking we do when we do it with our mind. So which one do you like? This or that, which I usually have. So this is more difficult, because this is serious talk. If you do this, that is just simple. We do a lot of time. We get by. We survive on that kind of talk, because wherever you go, you need that talk. Okay, so you need to know both. Don't completely lean on that kind of life. If you are a deep person, if you are a person who live on the on the meaningful side of it and not on the surface of things, then you definitely like this kind of talk as well, where there is enough pause and where you are honest about things, and it's not the other way. Okay, so don't totally ignore this, and don't totally ignore that, because then you're going to be isolated, alone. You can't survive alone, so you need to have that in hand to deal with many people. And you also must handle this. Okay, so that's it. I'll be back tomorrow in brighter ambience probably. This is because the mobile was put on charge. I had no way, and I thought I have some spare time, like 15 minutes, and let me just finish this. Okay, take care, have a good day, and oh, tomorrow is weekend. Today's Friday? No. Oh, sorry about that. Today's Thursday. Tomorrow is Friday. Okay. Happens when you are dealing with the daily life crisis. As today I watched a video on midlife crisis. I don't have a midlife crisis at all, though I am going through my midlife. I don't think it's a crisis. It's just a part of it. It's part of learning. You got to learn a lot of things through life, experiencing it, and it's okay. You just have to, at some point of time, you just have to sit and tell yourself, this is what you have to go through to learn, to get your lessons. This is what you have to go through. You need to give yourself that permission to have these kind of talks, sololoquy, whatever you call, self-talk, which you do. So it's okay. Nobody's going to listen to what you're saying. Say to yourself that whatever you are facing now, it's just a phase which helps you to learn and get to the next one. That's it. It makes you feel much better and much stronger and very clear about where you're heading to. So do that. Okay. Take care.